Hi, it's Jaitni. I hope you're having a good week. I hope something magical has happened to you and for you, and there's something that you're grateful for. So, this week, I want to talk about emotional eating. I want to spend some time explaining what exactly emotional eating is. And then I want to spend some time sharing with you some of the ways that I cope with it. So, emotional eating is not something that only impacts certain people, certain genders or certain age groups. It's something that we've all experienced. We've all felt the impact of it. What it is basically turning to food or alcohol to cope with your negative emotions. You turn to food for comfort. Another way to say it is you're eating your feelings. Um, Emotional eating, as I said, it's something that impacts everybody at some point or time. For some people, it's something that just becomes a part of their lives. So it is a form of disordered eating. It could lead to an eating disorder. But for now, we'll stick to our definition is where we turn to food or alcohol to cope with our negative emotions. Now, here are some ways I want to share with you that I cope with emotional eating. These are strategies that I've used in the past that I continue to use and that have worked for me. Take what resonates with you, add your own to the mix. Please share if you have some different ones. I would love to learn some of the strategies that you use. And as I said, just take what makes sense to you. So I've broken this up into two parts. The first thing that you want to do is identify the emotion behind the behavior. So that's one of the biggest ways that you can cope with it, right? Why are you overeating or why are you turning to food for comfort? What is that feeling that you're trying to cope with? Just label it, identify it, and move on. For me, a lot of times it's stress or it's anxiety. When I was living by myself and I really missed my parents, it was also loneliness. So it really helps to know the feeling behind the action that can lead to a lot of self awareness, clarity, and perception to make a change. You can also keep a diary. Some people are comfortable with that, and it's very simple. All you have to do is track what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. So again, going back to my example of stress eating, my what I'm feeling would be stress, and why I'm feeling could be, could be many reasons. Maybe it's a work deadline that's approaching, or maybe I have an upcoming exam that I'm really worried about. So it could be many reasons. But when you list the what and the why, again, you develop a lot more clarity and you know how to handle it in the future. Now, the next thing, this is the most important step. No matter what you do, this is something that you want to stick to, is that you never judge yourself. You never judge yourself and you never judge the emotion. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I used to shit on myself all the time. I have since silenced the inner critic. Sometimes, she does rear her ugly head, but for the most part, she's pretty silent. But when it comes to food and turning to food for comfort, it's so easy to say negative things to yourself. That negative self-talk just rises. When I used to turn to food to cope with my feelings, some of my negative feelings, after I was done eating, I would say things like, I'm such a fat ass. I'm such a cow. I'm so ugly. Why can't I stop eating? Instead of showing myself some compassion and some understanding, I was too busy beating myself up. So never judge yourself. When you talk to yourself with compassion and kindness, you're actually going to understand what's going on. But when you insert judgment, there is only resentment and you're going to feel stuck. And while we talk about not judging yourself, you also want to thank the food that you're consuming. The reason I say that is it's still giving you comfort, right? It's still helping you cope. So instead of discounting that or, cursing the food that's available, why not be thankful for it? Be grateful that you have that food to turn to. So many people don't even have that as an option. So when you go in with that attitude of gratitude, it's a lot easier to make a positive change. Now, the third step here is to start to figure out how you can handle these emotions differently. How can you introduce healthy coping mechanisms that are going to stick so you don't turn to food to make yourself feel better? Now, there are two parts to this. I'm sorry I said two parts earlier, but this portion is divided up into two parts. One is mindful eating, and part two is healthy coping mechanisms. So the way you can handle emotional eating, one of the ways is to have healthy coping mechanisms, right? So some of the things that I do that help me cope with my feelings, one is I move my body. So movement is key to me. It's my biggest stress buster. It's actually one of my main stress busters. So for me, even if it's 30 minutes of exercise, I feel so much better at the end of those 30 minutes. It could be strength training, it could be yoga, it could be cardio. Those are things that work for me. For you, it might be something different. And on the days when I do rest and recover, I still move. I take my dog for a walk twice or three times a day. I cook, I help my mom clean. So I stay active. I keep my body moving because that really helps me. Something else that I do is I turn to my support system. So it's so easy for me to isolate when I'm feeling depressed or anxious or even stressed. But when I turn to my support system, it's really uplifting. It helps me. I could either be stressing on my couch and eating my bag of Cheetos, or I could realize what's going on with me and instead reach out to a friend and say, hey, can we chat for a minute? Can we do a video call? Or can we meet in person? Or even just make a plan. Just making a plan can give you some hope. So turn to your support system, whatever that looks like. I also turn to therapy. It's an outlet for my emotions. And I really appreciate when somebody listens to me objectively without inserting the conversation with unsolicited advice. So talking to a professional has really helped me. You can consider therapy, you can consider going to a dietitian, a nutritionist, whatever floats your boat. A few other tactics that have worked for me are meditating on a consistent basis, as well as breath work. So I use different breathing exercises to deal with my emotions, really to process my emotions. So there's the 4-7-8 breathing exercise. I also use box breathing. Both of these really help with my anxiety. So whatever form of breathing exercises that work for you, if that is something you want to experience. And then, just some other suggestions that may help, volunteering. That's a big one, right? Dedicating your time and effort for the betterment of somebody else. I mean, how much more rewarding can life get? So you could volunteer, you could join a club, you could go dancing. There's so many ways that you could help your mind. So figure those out, figure out those methods that are going to work for you. Now, the other half of this is eating mindfully. There are a lot of steps that go into it, but they're really easy and they're simple. So what you want to do is eat regularly and eat a variety of meals. So what I mean by that is if you have breakfast at 8 a.m. and don't have your next meal until 3 p.m., what's going to happen? Your body's going to be ravenous. It's going to need energy. Your mind is going to need a break from whatever you've been doing. So you're automatically going to overeat or turn to food to really give you that boost, right? Instead, plan out your meals on a regular schedule, whether you want breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or just lunch and dinner, whatever your schedule looks like. Stick to that. And then also have a variety of meals. So try to make your meals colorful. Make sure you're having whole foods, and make sure you have a variety of nutrients on your plate. So have some carbs, have some protein, have fiber, have some fruits and vegetables. So get all of that in, because that way you have a diverse and colorful platter in front of you, and it's going to help you feel more satisfied. And then in the same token, figure out what satisfies you and also you find appetizing. So for me, a home cooked meal is voila, it's perfect. But that may not be the case for you. So figure out what it is that really helps you satisfy your hunger. If it's your mom's, special meal that she cooked when you were growing up, ask her for the recipe or find the recipe and try and replicate it. Keep at it until you have it figured out. So whatever it is that satisfies you, stick to that. Because when you do that, you're not going to look in other places to satisfy your hunger. And then look for alternatives. So to give you an example, I often crave sugar after a meal. I used to have, a big piece of chocolate or a cookie after a meal, and that just never worked for me. Sugar is poison for my body and for my mind. I don't do well with sugar. So I had to wean myself off of it. And I started off with a piece of dark chocolate. On days when I don't have that small piece of dark chocolate available, I may have some dry fruit that's not as sugary. So it could be a date, or it could be, figs. Sometimes I even have apricots. So, whatever is handy. So think of alternatives. If you don't like consuming kale, you don't have to have kale. You could try and have it as part of a salad. You don't need to just have kale, or you could find a replacement for it. The next thing is make sure you have healthy food available. How can you eat healthy if you don't have access to it, right? If your pantry is full of processed food and junk food, that's all you're going to consume. So let your environment set you up for success. And that way, when you have the healthy options available, that's what you're going to turn to. Now, you can try meal planning or meal prepping. That's something I used to do just so I would have healthy options available in my fridge. But you do you, figure out what works for you. And then minimize distractions while you're eating. It's so easy to not know what you're eating and how much you're eating when you're watching that television show or when you're in front of your laptop trying to get your work done. Stop that. Shut down that laptop, walk away, even if it's 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, just spend that time eating. Same thing with the TV show. If you can, just step away, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, finish your food, and then go watch TV. That way, when you don't have these distractions, the mindless eating really decreases. Now, the last step in all of this, so the first thing is identifying the emotion, right? Keeping track of your feelings, and then never judging yourself or your feelings, thanking the food for giving you comfort, and then finding other ways to cope with your negative emotions in the future. Then step 5 is really acknowledging and appreciating the effort that you're putting into this. Because it's not easy, you've been programmed to turn to food to help with your feelings. It's your way to cope. It's not something that you're going to be able to change overnight. It's going to take a while. It's possibly a habit that's been a habit since childhood. So the fact that you're here wanting to learn how you can change this and how you can grow and walk away from emotional eating is a huge win in itself. So acknowledge that and appreciate your effort. Remember, it's about progress. Emotional eating isn't going to just go away altogether, right? Because life is uncertain. We're imperfect. Life is imperfect. Things happen. We're rarely in control. Even if we'd like to believe that we're in control, we aren't, because shit happens. So in those moments, if you've been practicing these techniques consistently, you're going to set yourself up for success. And that success may happen once in 5 times or twice in 5 times. It's still better than never knowing any of this and never implementing any of this, right? So appreciate your effort, because it truly is about progress and not about perfection. With that, I'm going to wrap this up here. If you enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, and share. If you want to learn more about what I do and how I can help you, check out my website. That's www.imperfectbodies.com. Imperfect bodies is one word. I hope you have a really good week, and one where you feel aware and happy and well. I'll catch you next week.